Well, hello there, and welcome to August, where we start off welcoming back the dark skies, and starting off with our customary look at the sun in solar cycle 25. Okay, so looking at the sun here on the 31st of July, we see that we're back to the situation where the sun is completely spotless. It has been like that for the last 3 days, but it has not always been like that, and we'll look at some images from earlier in the month. There, just looking at the stats here, we see that from the peak of the 2019 minimum, where 281 days were spotless in 2019. That's 77% of all possible days. Then last year, 2020, we were down to 208 days, or 57%. And in 2021, we see that only 49 days, even though we're now into the beginning of August, only 49 days have been spotless. That's 23% of all possible days. So solar cycle 25 is getting off to a pretty good start, actually. And some of the projections are saying now that it's going to be possibly, we're not sure, but maybe a bit better than solar cycle 24. The earlier projections were saying that solar cycle 24 and 25 were going to be much of a muchness, which is to say not terribly active. Certainly 23 and 22 before those were much more active. But 25 looks as if things might be picking up a little bit from 24. So we'll keep an eye on all that and see what's happening. Now, I did say there had been more activity during the month, and here's some pictures from Andy McRae in Bangor. And active region 2846 has got a lovely close-up of this here. You can see a huge structure there, the magnetic rings pulling out of that spot, and a great structure all over the sun, actually. This was taken, I believe, through a Lunt solar telescope, and I think it's quite a while since we've actually had 5 different active groups on the sun, and very good structure. Indeed, there's another group there unlabeled that probably looks as if something's happening as well. So the sun is definitely getting much more active now, and that's all looking good. There's also rather a nice prominence on the edge of the sun just here, and I would think that would probably almost entirely engulf the Earth. It doesn't look very big there, but it's a long way away, and the sun, of course, is over 100 times the diameter of the Earth, so that would probably be sort of an Earth-sized prominence there. Now then, the noctilucent cloud season, probably more or less over in August. The latest I've ever seen noctilucent clouds from Larne would be about the 4th of August, but there have been some good ones in July, and I did catch an animation here that was sort of round about midnight between the 12th and 13th of July, and you see the movement in the clouds here, and giving great structure and all that. It's a fantastic view, best I got this season. So there we are, that's the noctilucent clouds. Now then, the planets. The planets are pretty good as well. There's Jupiter and Saturn are really where the action is here. They're both reasonably low in the south, around about sort of before midnight, below 20 degrees. And Jupiter is at opposition on the 20th of August, and visible quite low in the south in Aquarius. And I'm going to come back to Jupiter in a little while, because there's some interesting things happening with Jupiter that are well worth observing, to do with the Galilean satellites and so on. Saturn is at opposition on the 2nd of August, and again is quite low in the south in Capricorn, just about 18 degrees or so to the west of Jupiter. So both look quite good. Both are a bit low for ideal viewing, but better than they were last year and well worth a look. Now Mars, I'm afraid we're probably not going to see much of Mars this month. It is very, very low after sunset, but you probably won't even get to see that at all. Venus is similar, but a bit easier to catch because it is that much brighter than Mars, but still very low in the post-sunset sky, so you'll do well to see Venus. Mercury is at superior conjunction, that is to say very close to the Sun, and so not visible to us this month, I'm afraid. We may catch a little bit of it in the early part of September, but it's not the best apparition. The 2 ice giants, Uranus and Neptune, they're visible. They're not spectacular to see, but you can see them both in a small telescope. Uranus is in Aries later in the evening, after about 10 or 11 at night. It gets higher later on in the evening, and later on in the month indeed. Its magnitude about 5.8. Theoretically just about naked eye visible. Some people have seen it, I never have. But more readily visible in a small telescope, where it appears as a small green blob, if you can find it. Likewise, Neptune, not naked eye visible at all, not at magnitude 7.8. No chance there, but that's visible. It's just in Aquarius, but actually more easily located, I think, from the head of Pisces the fish. It's just a little bit below that in the sky. Again, later in the evening and later in the month is better for Neptune, and that would appear in a small telescope as a small blue blob. So planets well worth looking out for. So now let's have a look at those gas giant planets again. This time we're looking south approximately, and we're looking at the 20th of August at 11 in the evening, 2300. So first of all, we've got a nice moon in the picture. Let's have a closer look at the moon. Quite low down, about 10 degrees above the horizon, almost full, just about coming up to full there. And close to the moon, a few degrees from the moon, we have Saturn. And we can have a look at Saturn. We can zoom in on Saturn here and zoom in close enough. Now you can actually get a picture of Saturn with a small telescope and a webcam. It's quite a good way of doing it. And if you turn up the exposure hugely, you can usually see a few of the moons as well. Easiest one to see, obviously, Titan here. Titan is at the approximately 8.5 magnitude, and then a few others, sort of 9th and 10th magnitude: Dione, Tethys, Rhea, and Enceladus. You can get Enceladus is the darkest, about 12 magnitude. And then looking closer at the planet itself, you can see that we're not very far away from opposition. You can see a bit of shadow on the rings. But that's because we're just 18 days past opposition at that point. But the ring's nicely on display. That will they'll tip away to become more edge on over the next few years, but they're still quite nicely visible. So that's Saturn. Now let's move out from Saturn and go and have a look at Jupiter. And this is where things get interesting. We'll zoom in on Jupiter here. And now we'll see we have Ganymede and Callisto out to opposite sides. And as we zoom into Jupiter, at this particular time we'll see the great red spot is very much on display. But also we have Europa and Io quite close into the disk. Now what we'll do here is we'll actually sort of accelerate the time forwards. And we'll see that those two moons are about to be eclipsed by Jupiter. Here we go. And there, we'll slow that down again. And you'll see there just at 2400, just midnight, just after midnight, first Io, then Europa will disappear behind Jupiter. And you should be able to observe that in a telescope. You won't see it quite with this detail, but it should look quite spectacular. So that's the gas giant planets. So now, August, of course, is the time for what many of us consider to be the best meteor shower of the year. The purists might say that the Geminids in December are better, but quite frankly, if you're going to be out at night looking up into the sky for a long time, doing it in August is far more comfortable than doing it in December. So that's why I like the Perseids. Now then, where we're looking in the sky, we're sort of looking that the shower peaks on the 12th to 13th night of August, and we're looking to the northeast after about 11 p.m. Looking up towards sort of the familiar W of Cassiopeia. The radiant is just down from that below the double cluster in Perseus, and you'll see Murphak and Algol, the two main stars of Perseus, down here. So look in that general direction, but not directly at the radiant. Look around the radiant, sort of perhaps 30 or even 45 degrees from the radiant, and you should see meteors coming through. Now here's one that I photographed many years ago. This is so long ago. This is film actually, and this is the W of Cassiopeia here. And I managed to catch the meteor streaming straight through. That actually made a noise, that one as well. Some of the brighter ones do. Because it is a particle of sand burning up in the upper atmosphere. that you're looking at there, and you do get colours. Those are real colours, like that one there. Now this is some more recent ones shot with a digital, and I've got two on the same frame here, actually, one more or less identical to my previous film shot, because this is the W of Cassiopeia here, and again that is a multicoloured streak through there, and there's another one in the frame just up here. They should come fairly thick and fast after about 11 p.m. In fact, 2 weeks either side. Actually, it's quite a broad shower, really. So you can start looking any time after the beginning of August and through to about the sort of 20th, 23rd, something like that. And you may see meteors any clear night. The moon is new on the 8th, so by the time of the 12th, it's a waxing crescent setting about 22:45, so those are very favourable conditions. And of course, actually it gets a little bit better still after midnight, because the Earth is sort of facing towards the comet trail that generates the meteors. So that's it. And again, just a reminder there, look around the radiant, not directly at it. And actually, because you're going to spend a few hours doing this probably, lying on a sunbed type recliner in the garden is the best way of doing it. Prevents all sorts of neck strain and so on. So there we are. Perseid meteors, very good this year. Now then, I haven't talked very much this time about anything deep sky, so we're doing a lot more of that in next month's edition, where we'll talk about the Milky Way, Summer Triangle, some deep sky objects around that area, and plenty else that we can see in September. So that's coming up. Now, as Columbo says, just one more thing. And that one more thing is Orion. Towards the end of August, I've set this for the 31st of August here, 5 o'clock in the morning, you can get your first glimpse of Orion. And it's always good to see, I think, to do the comparison between Rigel and Betelgeuse, because certainly in recent years, Betelgeuse has been fairly variable. It is a variable star anyway, but actually it's been right down a couple of years ago to the point where it was actually no brighter than Bellatrix, which is much more dim. There's about 1.5 magnitudes in it normally. So keep an eye on those two. Betelgeuse could, of course, explode at some time in the future, which is why we're also interested in keeping a close eye on it from year to year. So that's the first sign of winter coming. Sorry to rub that in, but that's where we are. You can actually see Orion in the morning at the very end of August. So keep an eye out for that. So that's all I have to say, apart from stay safe and keep looking up, and thanks for watching.